The dreams in From may not be dreams at all. They may be warnings. And if that is true, then some of the strangest visions we have watched across the series were never random hallucinations. They were messages about what was coming next, sometimes arriving before the characters were ready to understand them. But here's what changes everything. Season 4 keeps pushing the characters into altered states of consciousness. Jade experiences a terrifying vision after taking the mushrooms. Henry is shown disturbing images after being exposed to the man in yellow. Sara continues to receive voices that attack her psychologically. And Julie's strange abilities are becoming increasingly connected to events that do not behave like normal memories. The obvious explanation is that these people are hallucinating. But From has already shown us why that explanation is dangerous. Because inside this town, seeing something that isn't physically there does not automatically mean it isn't real. That distinction may be the key to understanding the entire mystery. Look at Jade. In Season 4, Episode 5, Jade's experience becomes so convincing that even Boyd appears inside it. Jade sees the slabs. He sees the dead children. He believes he is moving deeper into the mystery. Then he wakes up. Boyd tells him they never actually left. The entire sequence was a hallucination or altered vision. At first, this seems like the show simply telling us, don't trust what you see. But what if the message is the exact opposite? What if the point is that the characters are seeing real information through an unreliable form? That would explain something that has always been strange about From. The visions are often wrong about how something will happen, but they can still be right about what matters. And this is where it gets darker. Jade didn't simply see random images. His hallucination dragged him toward the same mysteries that have been haunting the town for seasons. The children, the underground spaces, the symbols, the history buried beneath Fromville. The delivery method was unreliable. The information wasn't necessarily meaningless. That difference could be intentional, because the town may not communicate with people by giving them clean answers. It may communicate by giving them nightmares. Think about how the series has treated visions from the beginning. Boyd saw Father Catry. Sara heard voices. Tabitha saw the children. Jade saw symbols and impossible historical images. Julie discovered that her relationship with time and events was not behaving normally. These experiences look different, but they share one disturbing feature. They force characters to confront something before they understand it. And that sounds much less like ordinary hallucination and much more like a warning system. That's not the real mystery. The real mystery is who is sending the warning, and why. Because if the town can place images inside someone's mind, then dreams and visions become another battlefield. The monsters don't have to physically attack you. They can attack what you believe. They can show you something terrifying. They can make you question your memories. They can make you doubt your own sanity. And once you stop trusting your own mind, the town becomes almost impossible to escape. This is why Jade's experience matters so much. He was searching for answers. The town gave him an experience that looked like an answer, but it also contained something else. Fear. That combination may be deliberate, because fear makes people react. And reaction may be exactly what the entity controlling this place wants. Now look at Henry. Season 4 gives us another important piece of the puzzle when Henry experiences disturbing illusions after being exposed to the man in yellow. The imagery is presented so vividly that the series deliberately toys with the idea that what Henry is seeing could be a window into something larger. But notice the pattern. The visions do not simply explain the mystery. They destabilize the person receiving them. That could be the mechanism. The warning comes wrapped inside terror. And if the person cannot separate the warning from the fear, the message becomes almost useless. This would also explain why From repeatedly makes its characters question whether they are losing their minds. Because perhaps sanity is not the real test. Interpretation is. The town may show you something real and then make you doubt it. That is far more dangerous than simply showing you a fake image. Because a fake image can be rejected. A real warning can be ignored. And the show has already demonstrated how costly that can be. Sara's voices are another example. For years, Sara has been forced to deal with voices that seem to know things she couldn't possibly know. The show never treats those experiences as simple psychological symptoms. They are connected to the larger supernatural machinery surrounding the town. In Season 4, Sara is again subjected to psychological torment from mysterious voices. So, ask yourself, why communicate through voices? Why use dreams? Why use hallucinations? Why not simply tell the characters the truth? Because perhaps the force behind Fromville cannot give them the truth directly. Maybe it can only influence perception. Maybe every warning has to pass through the victim's own memories, fears, guilt, and expectations. Which means every vision becomes personalized. Jade gets symbols. Sara gets voices. Henry gets images. Tabitha gets children. And that may be why the messages feel disconnected. They aren't different mysteries. They are different languages. And this is the detail everyone missed. The town may not be giving everyone the same warning. It may be showing each person the piece they are psychologically capable of seeing. That changes how we should look at every strange dream in From. Instead of asking, was it real? We should be asking, what was it trying to warn them about? Because if the visions are warnings, then the most terrifying possibility is still ahead. What happens when someone finally understands one before it comes true? What happens when a character realizes that the nightmare isn't predicting the future, but showing them a future that can still be changed? And if that's true, then the dreams aren't just clues. They are countdowns. And someone in Fromville may already have seen the ending. But if the visions are warnings, then we have to confront the most disturbing possibility. Somebody in Fromville may be receiving tomorrow's events before they happen. And that means the dreams are not merely showing the characters what the town wants them to see. They may be showing them what the town is about to do. This is where Julie becomes extremely important, because Julie's connection to time changes the rules. For most characters, memories belong to the past. For Julie, that boundary has already been broken. She can interact with events that do not behave like normal memories. She has experienced moments connected to the past and discovered that changing certain events may not work the way she expects. So, what if Julie's ability is not completely separate from the visions? What if dreams are simply the weaker version of the same phenomenon? One person sees the past, another sees something that hasn't happened yet, and another sees a symbolic version of both. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Fromville doesn't seem to operate according to normal time. The forest changes. The roads lead people back to the same place. The underground tunnels contain history that feels disconnected from the present. Objects from different periods appear together. People experience visions involving events that happened long before they arrived. And now the characters are experiencing information through dreams and altered states. That is too many broken rules for coincidence. The town may not exist inside ordinary time at all. And if it doesn't, then the word dream becomes misleading. A dream normally happens inside your mind. But what if, in Fromville, the mind is simply becoming a doorway? That would explain why certain visions feel more physical than normal dreams. They don't behave like imagination. They behave like contact. And this is where it gets darker. Because contact can happen in both directions. The characters may not be the only ones seeing something. Something may be watching them back. Think about the way the supernatural forces in From operate. They don't simply attack bodies. They manipulate choices. They exploit guilt. They use familiar faces. They appear at moments of emotional weakness. They tempt people into opening doors. They make people question reality. That suggests the real battlefield may not be the forest. It may be the human mind. And dreams would be the perfect place to attack. When you're awake, you can question what you see. When you're dreaming, your brain accepts impossible things as normal. A dead person can appear. A room can change. A stranger can speak to you. You can suddenly be somewhere else. And when you wake up, you might dismiss all of it. That may be exactly what the entity wants. Because the most effective warning is one the victim refuses to believe. Now consider Jade again. His visions have always been tied to his obsession with understanding the symbol. He believes there is a pattern. He keeps searching. He keeps connecting things. But his obsession also makes him vulnerable. If the entity knows what Jade fears, what he wants, and what he is trying to discover, then it can construct a vision specifically designed for him. That creates a terrifying question. What if some visions are genuine warnings, while others are traps pretending to be warnings? This could explain why the characters repeatedly make the wrong decisions after receiving supernatural information. They are not simply stupid. They are being given incomplete information. Maybe the town gives them one true detail, then surrounds it with lies. That would be the perfect psychological weapon. Imagine being shown a real future. You see someone die. You panic. You try to prevent it. And your attempt to stop the death becomes the very thing that causes it. Now the warning becomes part of the trap. And that brings us back to Julie. Because if time can be interacted with, then cause and effect may not work normally. The future could influence the past. The past could create the future. And a person could receive a warning that only exists because they eventually acted on it. That is a nightmare scenario. Because then escaping the town isn't just about finding the correct door. It is about understanding whether your own decisions are actually yours. This may also explain why the characters keep repeating certain patterns. People arrive. They discover the rules. They become desperate. They search for answers. They uncover something deeper. Then the town changes the game. It almost feels like a cycle. And if the visions are warnings, perhaps the cycle depends on people misunderstanding them. The town doesn't necessarily need to hide the truth. It only needs to hide the meaning. That's why symbols are so important. A symbol can mean one thing to one person and something completely different to another. A child can represent innocence. A monster can represent death. A tree can represent a path. A song can represent memory. But inside Fromville, those meanings may have another layer. The town speaks in symbols because symbols force the characters to interpret. And interpretation creates mistakes. That may be the central weakness of the people trapped there. They keep asking, "What does this mean?" instead of asking, "Who wants me to think it means this?" That distinction could separate the survivors from the next victims. Because not every supernatural message needs to be false to be dangerous. Sometimes the truth itself can be weaponized. And there is one character who may understand this better than anyone. Victor. Victor has spent decades surviving in a place where reality constantly breaks. He has seen things other people cannot explain. He has forgotten things. He has remembered things at the wrong time. He has drawings that preserve memories he cannot fully explain. And most importantly, Victor has learned one rule. Do not assume you understand what you are seeing. That makes his behavior far more important. People often treat Victor as someone who simply doesn't remember everything. But perhaps his fragmented memory is not only a weakness. Perhaps it is protection. Because if the town can manipulate memory, then forgetting something might sometimes be safer than remembering it incorrectly. Victor's drawings may therefore be more reliable than his spoken memories. A picture does not explain itself. It simply preserves what was seen. And that may be why the show keeps returning to his drawings. They could be another form of warning. Not prophecy. Not explanation. Evidence. And if Victor's drawings, Jade's visions, Sara's voices, Tabitha's encounters, and Julie's time experiences are all different expressions of the same phenomenon, then we are looking at something much bigger than random supernatural events. We are looking at a system designed to communicate, a system designed to manipulate, and possibly a system designed to prepare certain people for something that has not happened yet. But here's what changes everything. If the dreams are warnings, then someone has to know what is coming. And if someone knows what is coming, then the final question is no longer, can they escape Fromville? It becomes, who is showing them the future? Because whoever controls those warnings may already know exactly how the story ends. And now we reach the part of the theory that changes everything. If the dreams are warnings, if the visions are fragments of information, and if Fromville is capable of showing people events they could never know about, then there may be only one explanation for why the characters keep receiving different pieces of the same puzzle. Someone is preparing them. Not necessarily to escape. Not necessarily to survive. But to reach a specific moment. That is the terrifying possibility hiding underneath the entire pattern. Because look at how the supernatural information works. The characters are never given a complete answer. They receive fragments. a symbol, a voice, a child, a memory, a nightmare, a vision, a strange object, a sentence that makes no sense until much later. Each piece appears meaningless on its own, but when you put them together, something begins to emerge. And that is exactly how a warning system would work. You don't need to show someone the entire future. You only need to show them enough to make them move toward it. That may be what Fromville has been doing all along. And this is where it gets darker. What if the people trapped inside the town aren't simply prisoners? What if some of them are participants in a story that has already happened before? That would explain the strange feeling of repetition that follows the series. Different people, different generations, different tragedies, but the same symbols, the same locations, the same supernatural patterns, the same obsession with escape, the same children, the same trees, the same cycle of hope followed by destruction. Maybe the town doesn't create new stories. Maybe it repeats old ones. And every dream is a way of reminding someone what happened last time. That would make the visions much more frightening. Because a warning about something that has never happened is uncertain. But a warning about something that has happened again and again is different. It becomes a pattern. And patterns can be predicted. This could also explain why certain characters seem connected to people from the past. The show keeps creating parallels that feel too precise to ignore. Someone resembles someone who came before. A role appears to repeat. A tragedy echoes another tragedy. A symbol returns. A location becomes important again. The town seems obsessed with repetition. So perhaps the real supernatural power isn't simply creating monsters. Perhaps it is creating cycles. And the dreams are cracks in that cycle. They allow certain characters to see the pattern before they become trapped inside it. That's why the visions may be dangerous. Because if someone understands a pattern, they might break it. And if the town depends on repetition, breaking the pattern could be the one thing it cannot tolerate. Now think about the monsters. For a long time, they appeared to be the biggest threat. They come at night. They smile. They imitate human beings. They wait outside doors. They exploit trust. But the deeper the story goes, the less important the monsters seem compared with whatever controls the world around them. They may not be the architects. They may simply be the enforcement mechanism. The real power may operate somewhere above them. And if that's true, the dreams could be coming from that higher level. But there is another possibility. What if the warnings aren't being sent by the enemy? What if they're being sent by the people who came before? That would make the visions something completely different. Imagine that previous victims discovered pieces of the truth, but failed to escape. Their memories became trapped inside the supernatural system. Their experiences became symbols. Their deaths became warnings. And eventually, those warnings began appearing to the next generation. Not because the dead were alive, but because the town itself preserves what happened. That would make Fromville almost like a living memory. Every person who dies leaves something behind. A story, a symbol, a place, a trauma, a warning, and the next person has to decode it. This could explain why the show repeatedly focuses on memory. Because memory may be the real battlefield. The monsters attack the body. The visions attack perception. But memory connects the entire system. If you can control what someone remembers, you can control what they believe happened. And if you can control what they believe happened, you can control what they do next. That's why Victor matters so much. That's why Jade matters. That's why Julie matters. That's why Sara matters. They aren't random characters experiencing random supernatural events. They each interact with a different layer of the same mystery. Victor represents memory. Jade represents interpretation. Sara represents communication. Julie represents time. And together, those four elements may form the key. Memory, meaning, communication,
time.
If Fromville controls all four, then escaping physically may not be enough. The survivors would have to break the system itself. And that may be what the story is building toward. A moment when someone finally realizes that the warning wasn't about avoiding the future. It was about recognizing that the future had already been repeating. That is the major reframe. The dreams aren't necessarily predicting what will happen. They may be revealing what has happened before. And if the same events are repeating, then every new nightmare is potentially an old event wearing a new face. That would make the entire town feel like a machine. People enter. The machine watches them. It learns their fears. It gives them visions. They make choices. Those choices create suffering. The suffering creates new memories. And those memories become warnings for the next cycle. A perfect loop. But every loop has one weakness. Someone has to remember enough to break it. And that could be why the show keeps giving certain characters impossible knowledge. They are slowly collecting pieces. Jade sees something he shouldn't. Victor remembers something he doesn't understand. Sara hears something no one else can hear. Julie experiences time differently. Tabitha sees children connected to a much older mystery. None of these answers are complete, but together they may be pointing toward the same conclusion. The town is not hiding one secret. It is hiding a repeating event. And the dreams are the cracks through which that event becomes visible. So the next time someone wakes up terrified after seeing something impossible, don't ask whether it was just a dream. Ask what appeared inside it. Who was there? What object was shown? What words were spoken? What location appeared? And most importantly, what happened immediately afterward? Because that may be the real test. If the dream always comes before a major event, then the visions aren't random. They're warnings. And if the warnings are becoming more frequent, then something enormous may be approaching. Something the characters have already seen. Something they just haven't recognized yet. That leaves us with the most terrifying possibility of all. Maybe the final nightmare of From won't show the characters how to escape. Maybe it will show them what happens if they fail. And perhaps someone has already dreamed it. We just haven't understood the warning yet. So when the next character wakes up screaming, don't look at the monster. Look at the image they saw. Because it may be the closest thing Fromville has ever given us to the truth. And if every dream really is a warning, then the question isn't whether the nightmare will come true. The question is, how many times has it already happened?